It always feels like if the Bills are facing the Chiefs, that the Bills are going to lose. And especially when it feels like all the pressure now continues to mount on Josh Allen. Doesn't that feel like the case? Because for so long, people have really, led the cheering section for Josh Allen, saying this guy deserves to be MVP. He has the high end potential to contend with Patrick Mahomes. But the more that he puts on his own shoulders, sometimes I feel like he forces it. Like last year, he's coming off a season high 18 interceptions. And I feel like a lot of that is just simply because he's trying to do too much. So we'll see if he can make the adjustments this year. But again, he's working with almost an entirely new cast. Losing Stephon Diggs, it's not going to be easy for Josh Allen this year. And we'll really see what he's truly made of. I feel like if there was a player that I would like to back, it would be Dalton Kincaid, like we talked about. I think he's going to be the security blanket for Josh Allen. But last year, a lot of the offense was certainly in his hands. And what I'm hoping for Josh Allen is that he doesn't press as much. So we talked about it last year. He had a career high 18 interceptions, but they also threw the ball a lot. I think he led the NFL in total yards, threw the ball. Like I think he was top 3 when it came to passing yards as well. Finished with 4,300 yards through the air and 29 touchdowns. I'm not sure if the offense is this prolific again. Like think about losing, Stephon Diggs and all the targets and all of the big plays that he makes in the end zone. So like I don't love taking unders, but passing touchdowns set at 27.5 for Josh Allen. I think I would lean towards the under. It's not my favorite play, but last year he finished with 29. And this year, I'm not expecting like a steep drop off. I think the lack of targets is going to equate to one fewer touchdown than last year.
I really, really like James Cook rushing touchdowns over 3.5 at minus 135. And he only had 2 last year. But one thing we need to realize is that, when you look at an offensive coordinator like Joe Brady, once he took over last year on an interim basis, all of a sudden the Bills started leaning on Cook a whole lot more. I think it would surprise most people to know that James Cook had more than 1,500 yards from scrimmage last year. That was 6th in the National Football League. So they were really leaning on him late because they changed their offensive philosophy. Now you get a full season of that, and I know this is rushing touchdowns, not rushing and passing touchdowns, but they use him a lot out of the backfield, and I feel like a full season of him with an offensive coordinator who clearly likes leaning on him, I think there's value on over 3.5 for rushing touchdowns for James Cook. One of those guys you don't necessarily think about when you think about the Bills, but I think is going to be a big part of what they do this year.
I kind of feel like their window is closing. Do you think that's a fair statement to say? Like when a team has been a contender for so many years, like we have seen with Josh Allen and the Bills, it feels like at some point, like the contracts just don't line up. And not every season you can be up there in the standings. So I don't know if it's this year for the Bills, but I don't know. It's hard to maintain that level of consistency that we've seen in Buffalo. And I think the question marks for me for the Bills usually come in the postseason because they've proven that they can be a great regular season team. Like I said, they've won their division 4 years in a row. But when it comes to facing the best teams, and maybe a lot of this is on their defense, because when you play in the AFC against all of these great young quarterbacks, you also have to have a great defense. Like I know people point at the Chiefs and say, well, they've got Patrick Mahomes. They also had a great defense last year. So it takes more than just a great quarterback to win in the AFC. And I'm not sure if the Bills have the pieces this year. But do we think they still win the AFC East? Because this has been where they've been really good. They have been great against the teams in their division. And they are the favorites this year. Do you think it's their year again to reign supreme in the AFC East? I feel like the Buffalo Bills are like buffalo wings for me. They're not in my top 5, but they're always very good. Like they're always routinely and consistently one of the contenders, and it's harder to mess them up, but they're not in my like top contenders for like the top 3 flavors. If you could put a sauce or a flavor attached to the Buffalo Bills when it comes to like comparables, would you do Buffalo? Or is there another flavor that you're like, hey, this is a really good flavor. They haven't won it all, but they're right there.
It might be the Old Bay wing, which you're like, oh my God, that's criminal. How could you say that about Buffalo? But think about it. You're like, wow, this is pretty good. I haven't, man, every time I get this, pretty good. Is it number 1? I don't know, maybe. On the right day, I could do for even more of these. I don't know, maybe. Let me try something else. I don't know. It's something like that where you're right there. I can't say definitively you're number one. You're always going to be there, but you're always going to be hanging around the top spots.
I'm going to tell you that exactly what I tell everybody who asks me and says the same thing all the time. We get this question all the time. As long as the Bills have number 17 under center, they're going to be just fine. There's a reason why they are still the betting line favorites to win the AFC East for a fifth straight year. There's a reason why they're still one of the top 5 or 6 betting odds favorites to win the Super Bowl, and that's because they have Josh Allen. They still have a really good roster. They have a really good coaching staff. Sure, they've had some changes, there's no doubt, and there are certainly questions. I would not shy away from that at all. But, they have number 17, and they still have a good roster.
Right. And I think in the NFL, obviously, you need the top end talent at quarterback. But looking across the AFC, and this has been the problem for the Bills in the past, Josh Allen has not been enough. Whether it's their defense letting them down, whether, somebody gets hurt and the linebacking core is extremely worn thin by the end of the season. It's not just Josh Allen. We know it's a team sport. So how does the rest of the team look around Josh Allen this year?
Well, I mean, just they have some questions for sure. I would say over the last few years, it's not that the rest of the Bills haven't been enough. It's just that they happen to have Kansas City in their own conference. That's why other teams like Baltimore or Cincinnati, and I know they did beat them once, they're all in the same boat here. You're facing Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Unfortunately, the Bills did give away a game with 13 seconds a few years ago that we all remember here, and that was that was their shot maybe. And then last year, same thing. They had a chance to win with a minute and a half left. They couldn't close the deal in Kansas City. So this has been a team that's right there knocking on the door, that's been good enough to win and be in a Super Bowl. But unfortunately, with Kansas City in the conference, it's been very tough. There's been changes. How does it look around them? It's going to be very interesting at wide receiver. They have one player on this team, Khalil Shakir, that has caught a regular season pass from Josh Allen, receiver. They have gone away from the model of having a true number one alpha receiver by trading Stephon Diggs. They don't have Gabe Davis anymore, and they're going to go to this model of we're going to have a lot of different guys who can do a lot of different things. You don't know where they're going to line up, and we're going to kind of throw a lot of different players at you in a lot of different situations. I think Kansas City kind of did that last year a little bit. Now, the difference is Kansas City has a tight end, and it's going to the Hall of Fame, and Travis Kelce, and he was kind of their de facto number one receiver. And I think the Bills are kind of counting on Dalton Kincaid to become that kind of guy. I would never put him in the breath of Travis Kelce, not yet at least, but Dalton Kincaid is going to be a major, major focal point of this offense, and I think that's the kind of model they're going after.